Hello and welcome back to Galactic Requiem Worldbuilding. As always, I'm your host, Katskov, and let's build some world. In a literal sense. Okay, last time we worked on this sector here, placing the system objects, their locations, and deciding the jump routes in between them. Next, we will move on to the sector next to it to give us some reach outside of the center area to work with. Let's start by grabbing the dice and not forget to determine how many objects are in the system. For that, we bring up the dice roller. Eight objects. So now we grab 8 dice. We determine how they land. And we place them. Oh, wrong selection. Here we have the dice we need. Second. Here we are. Sorry about that. Now, let's add the lanes. Let's quickly get the properties for the subspace lanes. And here we go. So, on this sector, I'm thinking there should be a lane between here. Forgot to turn off snap. Or I turned it on more so. Here we go. I want less connections between the inner sector and the outer sector, but it looks like there should definitely be a connection between these two despite that. And we will resolve that by simply not connecting these two. So here I'm putting the jump point not from this sector to this sector, but this one to this one, giving this sector a bit more importance in the overall scheme of location. That way, it is going to be a jump between these two, as opposed to this one being connected to the base network. Over here, we will connect the system we made previously to this one. And let's see. Do I want to make this a through point or not? That is a big question. I'm thinking we don't make this a through point, because then there'd be little reason for these separate ones. I mean, unless we don't know what's exactly in them yet, but we'll just connect it here because it seems like the best option. If you have an overall section you're going over and you just like consider how you want it to be, you don't always need to pre-plan, oh, the connections must go here or there, or this one must connect to this one. Sometimes you just go with what you think should be connected where and see how it turns out for your world. I mean, it can give you variety in what you don't expect, especially when you're creating systems that aren't necessarily relevant to the plot immediately. And if they ever become relevant to the plot, these connections could surprise you. For instance, I don't have any ideas for it yet, but let's say the players were to go to this system, or I'm writing a story in this system now becomes, well, connected with this system. So these two aren't simply one connection. One would have to go to here and then to here, meaning there could be trade disputes between these two to get further out. There could be a lot of things that come up because we've randomly placed it, well, semi-randomly placed the lanes. We now have new opportunities of where to place these things and what to do with them. And even though we didn't think of them immediately, we now have them for future reference. Let's see. So, now we have this sector done. We'll do one more sector. So, let's bring up the chart. Here it is. 8 again. Well, that is the average, so we must expect that to happen often. Well, the average is 7.5, but okay. So, let's roll these dice once more. So, a little flaw has occurred here in the rolling of the dice, and that is some of the dice have gone further away than what I would think the sector square would be. So, to solve this, what I'm going to do is not move them down or cheat in that. What I'm going to do is I'm simply going to assume that the sector is larger than the displayed section. In which case, not larger per se, but so, in a sense, when I roll the dice, I have to reset all the settings. So what we do is we select here, get properties, okay. So, 1 rolled, 2 rolled here. Well, since they rolled all the way, we'll assume there, and 1 rolled there. Now, the rest that rolled in what I would expect to be the sector square, we're going to essentially shrink the sector square. So we're going to have a lot of planets, well, objects down here. And then there is 2 more, so we'll place those as such. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, yes. Now, let's get the properties of the subspace lane once more. And let's connect to them. We will branch out. Oh, gotta select the right settings again. Here we go. We will branch out. Sorry. Here we go. Once more. Branch out from this sector into this sector. Because, as I said earlier, I want to minimize the number of connections to the main sector. That's not generally necessary, it's just a personal preference I have for this sector. Here, we're going to make these ones very connected. This will be its own separate, like, perhaps its own grouping. This is all one, all these rings represent the different territories of one nation. But we'll consider this maybe its own separate little entity. It's part of the major nation, that is this entire area, but this will be a separate, maybe slightly separately governed enclave or something like that. And we'll just get some. So, we don't need to connect every object in a sector together. And I think I'm not going to do that. We're not going to connect these 2 upper systems to the lower sector area. I will, however, assume and decide that this will probably lead into here, here, or here with its own connections, giving this set of planets a bit more objects, a bit more power in it. Hence why there would be a separate collective. Okay. So these two will be separate from there. They might connect up here from some section over here, or maybe it'll wrap around, but they won't be directly connected. So from here, let's generate a few actual objects. Let me bring up my object generator. This will take a second. Sorry about this. Where is it? Wrong file section. Here we are. Okay. Now we wait for the program to load and randomly generate a system. Copy that system. Open up our notes. And let's paste the system. So when world building, I'm not running a random bot campaign specifically, so I have full choice of where I put these things. So let's decide where we want this sector before we place it. So we have a trinary system, 3 stars, 2 M-class and a D-class. So we have a dwarf and 2 M-class stars. If you don't know what an M-class star is, they're the most common star. Generally, they can have a variety of sizes, but generally they're very small, dim stars. They're on the red end of the spectrum. While a white dwarf is a stellar remnant. Let's see. So, 15 objects, an icy planetesimal field, that's an outer system object. It's in the inner system, however, so, I mean, we don't necessarily follow the physics of such things here. It makes the game more entertaining. So we have an inner icy planetesimal field, a gas giant with 8 moons, gas giant with many moons, an exotic planet, that means we generate an exotic feature for it eventually, gas giant, some asteroids, another icy planetesimal field, another gas giant. Here we have a terrain bias planet. That means Earth-like. So this system is looking rather important. It is a multiple system, so let's see if we have a multiple system chart. No, we'll just use the main first one in the system. Well, the most important in the system. We'll use the D-class because I have a thing against M-class stars. They're just so common, and in the roller, they're statistically, it's not entirely accurate to actual astronomy, but it's semi-accurate in the sense that M-class stars make up like 90-something or so % of all stellar objects, and the generator somewhat represents that, so we get a lot of M-class stars, so I'll just use the D-class star as the symbol. Now we decide where we want to place this somewhat important system. And I'm thinking we'll place it here in this sector we were talking about. Okay, so now we determine this location. 6, 4. This object is in location 6, 4. So let's go over to the notes and we'll say this is 6, 4. And then we need a sublocation. And that sublocation is 9, 6. So we quickly note 9, 6. And there we have its location. Now let's do a little bit of let's add something to the system. For instance, we'll note that this system is an important trade lane out of the core. The reason most of the so far notes have been in regards to economics is when we do economics simulation, trade lanes become rather important, and it lets me know that if it's an important trade lane, the system is probably important, and then if we work from there, we can decide other such things. But for it's important for the economic simulation. Let's see. What else do we want to decide about this place? We'll also make this have mining bases given the vast asteroid field, but we will change the object numbers. So that would be 1, because you can mine an icy planetesimal field. You can technically mine a planet, but gravity wells. 1, 6, 7, 8, 9. However, we'll also add the outer asteroid field. No, outer icy planetesimal field, sorry. 10. Those ones have mining bases. Ooh, we have an unstable planet. I missed that. Let's determine if there is any special instability to the planet. Let me find the random generator compendium. We have special for... No, it's not an exotic planet. It's only it's only an unstable planet. Sorry. Thought for a second it was an exotic planet. Let's see, what else do we have? Well, we've made a few systems. Let's actually get into elaborating on one of these systems. You don't actually need to fill every system in the area before you can elaborate. I mean, it can help, but go about building your world how you want to build your world. So let's elaborate on a system. That'll give us something new to do. Let's go all the way back up to the sector we decided is a major trade location. The first one we decided. So 54310. That one was 54310. This one right here. So let's work on that. We see that it's a key system, so let's note that it is a, well, formatting, sorry. Here we go. Key system for trade in between the inner and outer systems. Key system for trade. Okay, what else do we want to decide about this place? Let's make it... Well, let's actually note what each object has. So, object 4 is the major trade location, and it is the civilization hub. System hub, more so. We'll put this note at the bottom. There we go. And we will actually note where those connections are in case I ever need to reference it in a file. This will take a minute. We'll order them later. So the first connection we'll note is 1,5. So we open that back up. One, 5, 6, 6. 11, 8. 11, 8. Sorry. Trying to remember numbers. And the last one, the last two, 8, 14. So let's note that one down. 8, 14. And lastly, 4, 15. 4 to 15. There we go. 4, 15. Now, if it connected out of a subsector, we'd note the full coordinates of the sector adjacent. So, for instance, we'd list that like this one up here, because it would be the full sector coordinates if it was connecting to something outside of sector. Luckily, these are all in-sector connections. So now we know where it connects to. That can be used for reference in our notes later. Sorry about all the, pauses and so forth. World building is a process that requires a lot of contemplation and thinking and planning and plotting. Even if we do skip a lot of the planning for generating this stuff, it still does require some planning and thinking. Let's actually generate what Planet 5 is. Well, Object 5, the primordial planet. We'll give it some actual information. So, now we're going to generate some atmospherics. Well, some simple atmospherics. I have a book that can generate the full atmospherics of it, but we don't need the full atmospherics of the planet. We just need to know whether the air is breathable and what kind of environment it has. So that's what we'll do. Maybe someday we'll generate a full-on far more scientifically accurate planet, but no need for that right now. So I'm gonna have to grab a D20 for this, I'm pretty sure. Oh, I'll actually roll it on the chart so you can all see our roll. Let's see here. Atmospherics, it's actually D12, okay. So let's go back over to our chart. Let me just bring that up for you all. Dice roller. Okay. Now we roll a D12. We got a 3. So now let me double check that chart one more time. And with the 3, its atmospherics are listed as greenhouse, not the plant box kind of greenhouse. Greenhouse as in it has a lot of greenhouse gases in it. It's not a very necessarily habitable place. I'll have to actually look up the very specific definition in the specific book for what greenhouse represents in this case, but we just simply noting its atmospherics are greenhouse for now. Remember, when world building, you don't need to... Oh, wrong section. Here we go. We'll note that that's the atmosphere. Remember, when you're just going over the rough world building, you don't need to know if you have a chart to use, or even if you're just going by what you want and you have some loose thoughts you want to slap down, you can just put those thoughts down and you don't need to figure out exactly what it means right then and there. Wait, figure out what it means when you want to figure out what it means, when you need to figure out what it means. So generally I have a rough idea of what greenhouse is, but I can look it up if I ever need to clarify and so forth. And after all this, I'll probably look it up and add it to the notes section so I have a bit more of a idea of what it means. As you can see, I'm rambling, hence the entire I ramble thing. Okay, let's see. So we have atmospherics. Let's also figure out what kind of terrain it has. For that, we will roll a d20. So let's get that d20 rolling with a 15. Okay. Frontier sector. Its terrain is Earth-like. Well, as in it has a variety of terrain features. Not it's like Earth, but you know. So, terrain. The terrain is varied. Okay. Now, let's complete this section by going over to the other. That was the, we already covered. I thought there were two primordial planets for a second. We got the artificial structure, got the asteroids. We could generate each moon. Sometimes for an important system, I'll go in and roll planet details for each moon, but we don't need to do that right now. So we have a base system done. What other details do we want? It also has asteroid fields we could make into mining places, but we're not making this system an important mining system, so we won't specify that the objects have mines. We can just assume they do. Now, what else shall we add? Let's actually move to something else. Because I don't know. I'm just thinking we should move to a different section. Let's open this up. Let's go to the core world city, and let's actually work on some city work. Here we go. Here we have a block system, and I believe, if I remember correctly, I made this 500 by 500 meters. That way I can keep map tools files running without having to get the files too large. That way, just switch maps between different 500-meter sectors. Okay. We'll make the road longer. Um,